The metallic tang of fear coated my tongue as the cold steel clamped around my wrists. Ironic, isn't it? A man who spent his days wrangling unruly teenagers and diagramming the intricacies of Shakespeare now found himself in the back of a police cruiser, the world blurring into a meaningless smear of taillights. My name is Jason Moore. I'm a high school English teacher, a respected one at that. Perfect attendance record, glowing parent-teacher conferences, and enough commendations to wallpaper my already cluttered office. My life was a meticulously organized lesson plan, a predictable symphony of student essays, and lukewarm coffee, until Officer Davies decided to rewrite the script. It had been a perfectly ordinary Thursday evening. I was walking home from the library, a well-worn copy of the Odyssey tucked under my arm. My house was just down the street, a modest two-story with a peeling paint job and a perpetually overgrown rose bush in the front yard. I was humming a mindless tune, lost in thoughts of tomorrow's lecture on Homeric similes, when the flashing blue and red lights ripped me back to reality. "Sir, I need to see some identification," a gruff voice barked. The officer, a broad-shouldered man with a face like granite, blocked my path. "Of course," I replied, reaching for my wallet. "Just let me get it out." He cut me off. "Suspicious behavior. That's what I'm seeing here. Loitering in a residential area. What's your business?" I blinked. "I live here, officer. Down the street. I'm coming home from the library." I held out my wallet again, but he refused to acknowledge it. Wallet down, hands up. "I'm going to have to detain you." "Detain me? For what? This is ridiculous." That's when the handcuffs clicked into place. The metal bit into my skin, a jarring violation of my personal space. The humiliation was a physical ache in my chest. He ignored my protests, shoving me into the back of the cruiser. The vinyl seats were sticky and smelled faintly of stale coffee and regret. As we sped away, I could see my house receding in the distance, the rose bush swaying gently in the evening breeze. It looked so normal, so safe, a stark contrast to the Kafkaesque nightmare I was being dragged into. The next few hours were a blur of procedural indifference. I was booked, fingerprinted, and thrown into a holding cell that reeked of desperation and stale cigarette smoke. No one would tell me why I was being held. Each question was met with a shrug or a curt, "You'll be informed in due time." Time stretched and warped. The fluorescent lights hummed with an oppressive monotony. Fear gave way to anger, then to a bone-deep weariness. I replayed the encounter with Davies over and over in my head, searching for a reason, a justification for this madness. There was none. None. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a different officer led me out of the cell. He was younger, his face etched with a nervous sympathy. "Mr. Moore, you're free to go. All charges have been dropped." "Dropped? What charges? Nobody has told me anything." He avoided my gaze. "It was a misunderstanding. Officer Davies filed a report, but it's been rescinded." He handed me my belongings, my wallet, my phone, and my battered copy of the Odyssey. The cover felt strangely foreign in my hands. "I suggest you file a formal complaint," he mumbled, before retreating back into the labyrinthine corridors of the station. I stood there for a moment, blinking in the harsh fluorescent light, the taste of fear still clinging to my tongue. I was free, but I wasn't whole. The perfect facade I had so carefully constructed had been shattered, leaving me exposed and vulnerable. The next morning, fueled by rage and a burning sense of injustice, I did what any self-respecting English teacher would do. I documented everything. Every detail of the arrest, every unanswered question, every moment of humiliation. I then marched down to the local police headquarters and filed a formal complaint against Officer Davies. I expected to be brushed aside, dismissed as a nuisance, but something unexpected happened. My complaint wasn't filed away in some dusty drawer. It was taken seriously. Days turned into weeks. I received a call from Internal Affairs. They wanted to interview me. They wanted to see my documentation. They wanted to know everything. During the interview, the investigators were attentive, their faces serious. They listened intently as I recounted my experience, the humiliation and fear still raw in my voice. I could sense a current of unease in the room, a silent acknowledgement that something was deeply wrong. Then they asked me a question that changed everything. "Mr. Moore, are you aware of any other complaints filed against Officer Davies?" I wasn't, but the seed of suspicion had been planted. I went home and spent hours scouring the internet, digging through online forums and local news archives. What I found chilled me to the bone. There were whispers, accusations, and thinly veiled allegations of misconduct surrounding Officer Davies. There were stories of falsified reports of harassed citizens, of power abused. One story in particular caught my eye: a young woman, wrongly accused of drug possession, whose case was ultimately dismissed due to inconsistencies in Davies' report. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about me. This was a pattern, a systemic abuse of power. Armed with this new information, I returned to internal affairs. The investigators were visibly shaken by what I had uncovered. My complaint had become something more. It had become an investigation. The wheels of justice, slow and grinding, finally began to turn. Officer Davies was placed on administrative leave. An internal audit was launched. And then the news broke. Officer Davies had been removed from duty. He was being investigated for multiple counts of falsifying reports, abuse of power, and misconduct. The department issued a public apology. A formal apology to me, Jason Moore, the English teacher who dared to stand up against the system. The apology felt hollow. It couldn't erase the humiliation, the fear, the violation. But it was a start. The experience changed me. It stripped away my naivety, my belief in the inherent goodness of the system. I learned that even in a society built on laws and order, there are cracks, vulnerabilities, and individuals who are willing to exploit them. But I also learned something else. I learned that one person, even a seemingly ordinary English teacher, can make a difference. That the power of a well-documented truth, of a persistent voice, can shake the foundations of injustice. I went back to teaching. The students noticed a change in me. I was less focused on grammar and more on critical thinking. I encouraged them to question everything, to challenge authority, to stand up for what they believe in. The rose bush in my front yard is still overgrown. The paint is still peeling. My life is still a messy, imperfect symphony. But now it plays with a renewed sense of purpose. A purpose born from the ashes of a false arrest, from the metallic tang of fear, and from the enduring power of the human spirit. I am Jason Moore, and I will never be silent again. The chalk dust has settled, but the fight continues.